Everything begins in the demonic city. We see in the main hall a group of dead people on the floor, in an atmosphere of total desolation. Then we observe the demon king named Belmont, who is sitting at his altar while thinking aloud that he is waiting to fight against a hero, and has been almost a century without going into battle. 100 years ago, he fought the hero who mastered fire, but Belmont set him ablaze in icy flames. 90 years ago, he fought against the hero who mastered the element of water, and Belmont drowned him in boiling waves. 70 years ago, the hero who wielded the element of air was defeated by being sucked into Belmont's hurricane winds. And finally, 50 years ago, the hero who controlled the earth element was buried under mountains of crystal sand at the hands of Belmont. Since that moment, no other opponent worthy of the great Belmont had appeared. But all this was about to change. One day an exuberant girl appears in front of Belmont and tells him that they finally meet. Belmont replies that so many years have passed, and they still haven't learned their lesson. He has beaten all the heroes who mastered the elements. She sarcastically replies that men love to exaggerate about their abilities, and the only way to know if what he says is really true is to take the test. She immediately launches into a direct attack on Belmont. The battle lasted 7 days and 7 nights, until finally, we see that the girl is all hurt until she gives him a kiss on the lips. Then Belmont begins to feel his strength fading, as he thinks how could that possibly happen? That he has defeated all his enemies, he ends up losing to a stranger because of a strange curse that involves using a kiss. Then Belmont exclaims that which element she uses, then the girl answers that it is the technique of dual cultivation. 50 years have passed since then. It is a sunny day and we are again in the demon city. However, it is in very bad conditions. So we observe a group of children in the company of a guide, who tells them that they have arrived at the most important place of the excursion. The guide tells them that it is the museum of the demon city. One of the children asks if they will finally see the heroine and the demon king. The guide replies that they will, but remember not to touch any of the exhibits. Minutes later, they are all inside the great hall. The guide asks them to be quiet and tells them that when the demon king's powers were sealed, he died and became a statue. And since then peace has reigned in Pristiland, thanks to the heroic action of Lady Alia. Many children comment that she is amazing. Others wish to be like her when they grow up. After that, the guide tells them that it is time to continue with the tour, leaving a girl in the room who is cleaning. However, before continuing, the guide says to wait, while holding the girl who was cleaning by the arm, and while they both look at each other. The guide continues talking, saying that because of the heroine's compassion, the demons were allowed to live among them, and that they can be recognized by their horns. She immediately throws the girl, revealing her horns in her hair. The guide goes on to explain that however the powers that these demons had were sealed along with those of the demon king, therefore they no longer have the power to harm anyone. At the end, the guide says it's time to continue with the next exhibition. Then the cleaning girl gets up from the floor in annoyance, as she thinks that she just has to hold on until the night. Hours later it is night, and the demon girl finds herself in a room where the reflection of the moon reaches her. Then she takes out a vial containing a magic amplifier, which contains dragon saliva. The girl says that during these 50 years, she finally managed to collect enough essence, and the day of the return of King Belmont has come. Then, knowing that she has only one chance, she ingests the entire contents of the vial, and suddenly begins to feel a little dizzy, while around her and from her body begins to sprout a mount of magic rays, illuminating the entire room. After that, a little weak, she falls to her knees, while thinking if it really worked. Suddenly the statue of Belmont begins to break and some stones fall to the ground. She exclaims that finally came the day I've been waiting for, because King Belmont will return to life. Minutes later, we see that then among the ruins of the sculpture, a young demon appears. He then says that he feels that he has slept for a long time. She asks him, a little surprised, if he is King Belmont. He answers that it is, but he doesn't know who she is. The girl still can't get over her astonishment, as Belmont has the figure of a teenager. Immediately she jumps on him, telling him that she is Lacey. She was one of his subjects, but Belmont does not recognize her because she looks different. Then Lacey explains that after the fight, all the magical powers of the demons were sealed, and in some cases also affected the physical appearance of many. In addition, she had to be incognito working, while preparing everything, waiting for his return. After that, he remembers the last battle in which after the kiss, Lady Alia sealed him with a magical element he had never faced before. Then Lacey tells him that fortunately everything will improve, thanks to his return, and now the demons can count on his guidance. But Belmont tells him that no, that from now on he does not want to continue with the same thing, that now he wants to do other things. Lacey interrupts him, asking him what can be more important than reliving his days of glory. But Belmont answers that he is tired of having been the king for 1,000 years. Besides, since they all live together in peace, he doesn't want to alter the order. Then Lacey asks Belmont what was the power that the heroine used to seal her powers, since knowing it, maybe they can reverse it. Then he remembers that it was a ritual that consisted of exchanging bodily fluids through the lips, and it was called the technique of dual cultivation, although he had never heard of it before. Lacey asks him, how does this technique feel? He replies that it is as if all the blood is concentrated in the lower part of the body and it is extremely painful, and he does not know how such a power can exist. Suddenly the tour guide appears, while exclaiming that she had had a strange feeling, but she didn't think it was that. The guide is a royal knight. As she enters the hall, she exclaims that she didn't think that a weakling like her would be able to resurrect the Demon King. Then Lacey tells Belmont to run away, but, with a nimble movement, the knight lifts Lacey into the air, throwing her on the floor at the other end of the room, as she tells Belmont not to underestimate her air magic. Then Belmont tries to use his power, but when he tries, he realizes that he doesn't have it, moment that takes advantage of the knight, moving his sword to send a wave of air, throwing Belmont to the ground. Then, a little sore, he says that now he knows what a body without magic feels like. The knight interrupts him by telling him that this is thanks to Lady Alia, and that they are now wimpy demons. Belmont asks her if they treat them like that now, and Lacey answers that now everything has changed and they mistreat the demons, that even though there was a decree under which the demons would have the same rights as other races, however, that doesn't happen. After a few minutes, Lacey tells her king that over the years she learned some magic from humans, and with that maybe they will gain a little time. But the royal knight replies that her skills are not good, and she will be able to verify it when her hands are cut. After a few minutes, Belmont tries to use his powers, but they don't work, and then an idea occurs to him. He holds Lacey by her arm and kisses her on her lips, just as it happened with him. A process of transformation occurs as the previous time of the cultivation technique, although in that instant the royal knight launches an attack of air movement with her sword. However, before it hits Lacey and Belmont, he manages to stop the attack, launching a counterattack, leaving the royal knight injured, and tells her that he is thankful that he still doesn't know how to use the power that the heroine left him. Then the knight asks him how a weak demon is able to use such advanced magic. He answers that demons are not weak at all and immediately throws another attack at her, leaving her on the ground. A few minutes later, Belmont tells Lacey that he wants to remove the seal from all the demons, so he needs her to take him to a place where there are more women, so he can use the dual cultivation technique to revive the demonic race. Moments later, Lacey explains to him that they are in Rosie City, city named after the heroine Alia Rosie. That once that city was known as a demon city. Now it became the most prosperous human city in the world, a place where if you have money, then you can get anything you want. Later we see them arrive at a place for adults, in which there are pure human girls, as well as girls of other races, who are there to please the desires of those visitors. Then each one of them tries to capture Belmont's attention. That's why Lacey feels a little jealous. After a few minutes, one of the hostesses asks him if he has already chosen any of them, but he answers no. Then Lacey feels a little joy that does not last long, since Belmont answers that he is not going to choose, because he will choose all of them. He thinks that this way he will be able to know what effect the activation of magic causes in him with each race. But after a few minutes they take off his cloak, which he was wearing to make him more comfortable, and realizing that he was a demon, they throw him out of the place, thinking that he was someone who actually had a lot of money. Being on the floor, one of the girls of demonic race that is at the entrance of the place tells them that she did not know that there were still ignorant demons, knowing that the demons in that city barely survive, and that the fault of everything was the Demon King who lost the battle. Belmont approaches her, and the demoness thinks he wants to fight, but Belmont tells her to just watch his gaze, throwing a threatening aura at her, and asks her that if average demons live badly, which demons then have a normal life. The demon girl after a few minutes answers him that the only way is to be a student of the San Elmont School of Heroes, and that the entrance exam will be in 2 days, but warns him that a demon without powers will not pass the exam. 2 days later we see that Lacey and Belmont receive the news that they do not meet the requirements, since they must have a letter of recommendation, and therefore must leave the place, since there are too many people trying to take the exam. After a while we see them sitting on the floor. Belmont is disappointed for not being able to pass the test. Then he starts to talk bad about himself and mention how frustrated he is. Then Lacey realizes that he entered state A, and it is a state in which refers to the extreme dejection that the Demon King feels when he fails to fulfill a promise after spending some moments of his past that has fallen into that state. Suddenly a bolt of lightning explodes against Belmont, sending him flying across the floor while Lacey is attending to him. There is a girl named Alice Rosie, who is arguing with Lloyd Schumann, but the reason is that he tries to explain to her that she cannot take the exam like the rest of the people considered commoners, since the Master Ralph organized a different option for her. Then Alice ignores and launches an attack called Crossfire and Rain of Phoenix. But Lloyd explains to her that despite having magical attributes that stand out, they are still inferior to him, as he can predict all the moves she will make and thus be able to avoid any kind of damage, as well as being able to deflect any spell attack. Lloyd, for his type of magical defense, is known as the Elegant Spellcaster, as he can avoid attacks perfectly. As he speaks, Ali's attacks continue, and Lloyd deflects them. One of them hits Belmont's face. Seconds later, Belmont, full of anger, launches an attack that leaves Lloyd on the ground, while Alice thinks, where did he come from? Then Belmont tells them that if they are going to argue, they should at least not bother the others. Then Belmont approaches Lloyd and tells him that if someone disturbs him while he is in state A, terrible things will happen to him. Then Alice approaches to tell him to leave Lloyd alone, and Belmont sees her and confuses Alice with Alia. But before reacting, she grabs him by the shoulder, and when that happens, the dual cultivation technique is activated. Both begin to feel a strong pain. Fortunately, Lacey appears and separates them quickly, and seconds later tells him that Alice is a descendant of Alia, the heroine who sealed him. Seconds later, Lacey tries to take Belmont away, but Alice stops them, telling them to stop, telling them how is it possible that he found Lloyd's weak point so fast. Belmont answers that it wasn't magic. It's just something he possesses. After a pause, he says that it is because he is a descendant of an incubus, and then tries to give her an explanation, but Alice interrupts him to tell him that since they did him a favor, she is indebted, and as a gesture of kindness she will help them. Moments later, at the entrance of the Academy of Heroes San Elmont, we see that Belmont arrives with Lacey to enter, and they are received by the person in charge who had rejected them before, while he reminds them that they cannot register for not having a letter of recommendation. But in this circumstance, Belmont shows him a letter signed by the Rosie family. Then Alice also introduces herself to tell him that she wants to register. After that, they are given access. As they walk through the main entrance, many students recognize her, and others whisper about what she is doing, accompanied by some demons. Finally, when they go through the crowd, they meet a girl of beast race called Newt. They both recognize each other as they were childhood friends, but as time went by they stopped being friends. Then Newt tells her that if she came accompanied by demon servants, but Alice answers that she has just met them, but recommends her not to mess with Belmont, since he is a descendant of an incubus. Then she finds him attractive and hugs him, while she tells Belmont that she wants him to be her pet. However, during the embrace the strange magic was not activated. Suddenly Alice separates them and tells him to leave him alone. And being alone, a girl of elven race smells him. While she tells him that he smells very good, she is Ristana, and while she hugs him, she asks him if he is really an incubus because he smells so special. Then Alice tells Ristana to stop smelling him. While the three of them are talking, Belmont asks Lacey if she knows them. Lacey answers that the three of them are descendants of the heroes who defeated him, so Belmont tells her that it wasn't really just one called Alia. But Lacey explains that the group that defeated the Demon King was made up of 4 people, but Alia was the one who contributed the most. However, for that reason the rest of the heroes have a grudge against Alia's family, and the story that unites them is very complex. Suddenly beams of energy appear at the entrance, and we see Edward, who welcomes everyone to take the entrance exam for the San Elmont Academy, and tells them that he will be their examiner. Then you can hear among the applicants that some say he is the professor, a candidate with a high chance of being the head teacher of the academy that year. Others say that he must have used some kind of teleportation magic to be able to appear there. Lacey tells Belmont that she doesn't believe that a person of such a high rank is the examiner, that they should be careful. But Belmont tells her that she shouldn't worry, that although he doesn't know what triggers the technique, at least his ability to manipulate that kind of magic has awakened. However, when he tries to use it, he realizes that it is not very powerful. Realizing that, Lacey holds him by his arm and brings him closer to her, giving him a vial containing dragon saliva, the same she had used before to free him. She explains to him that it will help him to amplify his magic, but the effects do not last long, to ingest it secretly, just before taking the exam. But he ignores her and tells her that he will not use it, and Lacey asks him why he won't. Then Belmont answers that it is wrong to cheat. She desperately tells him that there is no time to lose and it is time for the demonic race to rise again, and that everything depends on him. Belmont then remains thinking about what Lacey has told him, and tells him that he still thinks that demons are not weaker than other races, and that demons are born with powerful magic, and even if they have sealed that magic, not to worry, he will pass the exam, to show her that they are stronger than she thinks. Suddenly out of nowhere appears Edward, who confiscates the vial, while telling her that if she really thought she could cheat in a test created by a space wizard, that she is a wimpy demon. Then after breaking the vial, Edward disqualifies Lacey and with a spell banished her from the academy out of the place, while saying out loud that he feels very ashamed, also that a long time ago they did not have demon candidates, and that race are always disappointing. After that, Edward tells Belmont that if he has something to say or wants to accompany her, but Belmont answers that he will make sure that she apologizes later. But Edward tells him that there is something wrong with expelling someone who wants to cheat. But Belmont answers that this is not the problem, but that he will call her a wimp. Seconds later, Edward calls him a wimp and reminds him that he is only there for Allie's Rosie, and ends up telling him that they are already late with the exam. Then, making use of power, all the applicants are teleported to the Dragon Wing Cliff, located just behind the academy. Once everyone is there, Edward explains that the exam is very simple, they just have to cross the bridge. When he says that, suddenly a bridge appears out of nowhere, which if they manage to cross and get to the academy, then they pass the entrance exam. Everyone thinks it's too easy, so there must be a catch. Edward adds that the test lasts 30 minutes, and only the first 100 candidates who manage to cross the bridge successfully will pass. That said, most of them immediately start running, and suddenly some applicants start sinking into the bridge as if it were mud. Some of the participants realize that if they concentrate they can advance. Elsewhere, Edward knows that the bridge is made of slime, and if the candidate does not have enough mana, the slime will suck them in. And the weaker their magic, the more they will sink. Even if they do not have much control of their mana, then they will be trapped and unable to move. Suddenly Newt walks with total ease among the participants, and Alice can walk but not so fast because she feels disgusted by the sticky liquid. Edward also thinks that the demon must be having a very bad time, which it really is. However, Belmont, being submerged in the slime, thinks that with his mana he can't escape, but he still has other options. Then, using some of his power, he transforms the slime into liquid, and despite Edward's beliefs, Belmont starts to swim quickly, leaving him surprised. Suddenly, everything has turned. It turns out that slimes are very weak monsters, but if you put several slimes together, a giant slime is formed, capable of being a worthy opponent, even against experienced heroes. Later on, we see that the slime has held Newt, and she calmly tells him that it's all she can squeeze. But now it's her turn, and using her claws she cuts the tentacles of the slime that were holding her. Baristana uses her power to create a shield that prevents the tentacles of the slime from touching her, while she continues walking, and the field even destroys several parts of the slime, making them explode. For her part, Alice makes her way using her fire shooting attacks. Edward observes in admiration that just as he suspected, the descendants would make it across, but hopes that the demon fails the test. Suddenly Belmont emerges among the slime. While one of them is carrying him, Edward thinks he is speaking the dead Babazic language, but he realizes he is using the spirit language, and he uses the little magic power he has to invoke the power of the spirit to communicate. Edward, annoyed, thinks that since he is the examiner, he decides the difficulty of the test, so he throws a potion in the slime. Under Belmont's feet, this causes the slime to mutate, throwing Belmont, and the slime transforms into a menacing creature, as Edward yells at him that he's a wimp and that's not his place. Then when the slime is about to attack him, suddenly Alice appears, throwing a fireball that destroys the slime, saving Belmont, preventing him from being hurt. So Edward tries to extract the potion to prevent Alice from being hurt, but his attempt doesn't work, and Alice throws her powers of Crossfire and Phoenix Rain, but her attacks don't work. Belmont tells her that it is because the monster absorbed a forbidden potion of Black Python blood, which is a magical potion that allows monsters to regain 1% of their full power. In spite of that, Alice tries to continue with the fire magic attack, but nothing happens. After that, Belmont tells her that he will have to use another strategy. So he holds her by the waist and, approaching her, gently kisses her. But the dual cultivation technique is not activated, and Belmont thinks it is strange that it did not happen. However, Alice uses a fist loaded with fire magic, which makes everything around her explode, disintegrating the slime, while Belmont thinks that she is scarier than the monster. Moments later, the slime has regenerated and attacks them again, but Alice uses her fire shield. That little by little the slime starts to go through. Then Belmont quickly throws himself over her, avoiding that the slime destroys her. After that, He holds Alice by the hand, and she asks him if he is going to continue with the same as before, but he tells her to be silent and concentrate. She notices that her power begins to concentrate on her hand. Then Belmont tells her that she has potential in her magic, but still lacks control over it. But instead he knows how to use it more efficiently than using her power. He makes a direct attack of demonic hell as a devilish weapon against the slime, piercing it and destroying it completely. After a while, many participants are happy to have managed to pass the test. However, Edward is nervous because he is worried about the Rosie family, about what they may think that something will happen to Alice. But suddenly, one of the candidates shouts that he sees Alice coming. Edward then is happy to know that she is well and that the demon had to have failed the test. But his surprise and everyone's is that it is the demon who brings Alice. Then Belmont only listens to the comments of the majority, who say that how is it possible that a demon passed. Others comment that it is not possible that the lady of the family is with a demon, so Belmont thinks that he did not know that the others hated the demons so much, since even passing the exam, they still look at him with dislike. As the two of them get closer, Edward tells her that only Alice passed but the demon was disqualified for cheating. So Alice tells him that he was with her the whole time, and that although it's hard to admit, she wouldn't have passed the test without his help. Edward then tries to persuade her by explaining that the person next to her is not a good Samaritan, and that demons are born with a terrifying magical potential, and that with a powerful army of demons, the Demon King had unleashed chaos. But thanks to the intervention of his grandmother Ali or Rosie, the Demon King was sealed, cutting off all sources of demonic power, and if it wasn't for his grandmother, they would not have reached peace. Therefore, with the sealed power, no demon can be able to get so much magic power at present, and thus the only reason is that he cheated. After that, Edward says that as an examiner, he will enforce the sentence for the cheater, activating an air spell and moving towards the demon. Belmont hits him right in the face, leaving him on the ground, in front of everyone. Then Edward is furious how he is able to hit him, while Ali's surprised thinks that Belmont, although he does not have much mana, instead his magical control is incredible, since he is not only able to break magical seals, but he can use the magic of others in his favor. But when Edward is confronting Belmont about what he did, a voice behind him says that this year they have an extraordinary student. The voice is the director of the academy. Her name is Karen Lynn, who came to supervise the exam. She greets Alice and tells her that she has grown up a lot. Then she approaches him, calling the demon by the name of Bell, and asks him if he cheated. But he calmly replies that he did not. Then the headmistress tells them to accompany her. Then suddenly she, using her powers, teleports them to the council room of the San Elmont Academy. Then she tells them that to check if they both have what it takes to enter the academy, she will personally prepare an extra test for them. But Belle asks her if they have already passed the entrance exam. Why should they take another test? But Belle asks her if they have already passed the entrance exam. Karen continues talking while she explains that the institution has the prestige of having been founded by the heroes who defeated the Demon King, and that its students meet the requirements to learn the most powerful magical abilities. Returning to the rules, the director tells them that one unwritten rule is that they do not accept demons, and the other is that they only accept one member per family. After that, Belle responds that if they are unwritten rules, they are still valid, since a valid written rule is that those races that pass the entrance exam can enter the academy. Then murmurs are heard among those present, and the director tells them that the test will not be difficult anyway. Karen, the first thing she tells them is, why do they want to join the academy? Then Alice answers that she wants to be a heroine to protect others like her grandmother Alia. And Belle answers that he wants to allow the demon race to have the same rights as all the other races on Earth. After that, the director answers that she finds it interesting that one of them wants to be a heroine to be the Demon King's nightmare, and a demon wants to revive the glory of the demon race. Minutes later, Karen tells them that in front of them, there are the rings of Damocles, which were created by the great Alia. If the ring accepts them, it means that they have the right to be heroes. She also adds that of the two, only the most powerful one will be accepted. Belle asks in case they are not accepted what will happen, and Karen answers that then the ring will absorb all their magic and they will be discarded. Then Alice asks that if she doesn't accept them then they will die, and Belle tells Alice that her grandmother did make them, as she doesn't know how they work. Karen then tells them that they still have time to say no, but after a while she sees that none of them regrets it. She tells them that it is time to begin. Then after a few seconds they each put on a ring. In the case of Alice nothing happens, so she asks if she approved. But instead, in the case of Belle, a trail of energy emerges from her ring that crosses the chest of Alice and Belle. Then a kind of guardian appears, who tells them that it is the ring of judgment, and that he has entered their hearts to give him their souls to judge them. Seconds later, the guardian realizes that Belle has no soul, and scared disappears. Therefore, Karen tells him that she finds it interesting that the ring accepted it. Meanwhile, the energy trail begins to ask Ali's uncomfortable questions, which gradually absorb all his magical power. Finally, the guardian of the ring appears, wielding his sword towards Ali's, and suddenly Belle shoots a beam of energy towards the guardian, but it does not cause any damage. Then the headmistress tells him that mediocre magic did not cause any scratches, but Ali's tells him that she is fine, not to worry about her. Suddenly, when the guardian is about to thrust the sword into Ali's, Belle places his hand as an intermediary so that they do not go through it, then says that he believes that protecting a girl is more important than any of those absurd rules. Ali's is surprised by what he has said, and suddenly the dual cultivation technique is activated, and suddenly the guardian is left in shambles. After that, the principal applauds them and tells them that they both passed the test with flying colors, therefore they have been accepted by the San Elmont Academy. The next day, they begin their first day of classes. Belle meets with Lacey, and she tells him that she was only sent out of the academy. After talking, he points out the different women of many races, so he won't have to make much effort to activate the dual cultivation technique. Then Belle wonders which of them will be in his class, but is interrupted by Lacey, who gives him a book about how to interact with women according to their race type. Belle thanks her, and minutes later we see him walking through the corridors of the academy until he reaches his classroom. While he thinks that in order to revive the demonic race, he will activate dual cultivation with every woman there. But when he opens the door of the classroom, he realizes that they are all male students, and it is because the academy divides them by gender, except for some extracurricular activities, where it is necessary that they get together. Then gradually begins to enter into a state for not having realized that little detail. The teacher then tells the students in the room that he will invite Rickett Field to speak on behalf of the students. Before starting his speech, we will say that he is actually a lord, and his father is the richest man in the world. Even Lord Rickett's powers are so powerful that they would drive demons to flee, and his family's status is comparable to that of the founding heroes. When he finishes speaking, he goes to his seat again, while he thinks of Ali's as his future wife. Suddenly he observes Belle, and thinks that he tempted her in the entrance exam, so she won't let him pass so easily. Therefore she stops for a while in front of him. Belle, for her part, just thinks about why she is watching him, and remembers a piece of advice from Lacey, who told her that she should always smile out of politeness. However, trying to do so causes the opposite effect on Rickett, as he thinks she is threatening him by emanating a somewhat oppressive aura. After a while, Rickett confronts Belle to know his intentions with Ali's, but not feeling comfortable with the answer. He thinks it is a challenge, so using his power, he summons a cat with a snake tail, a type of ability typical of the Field family, besides telling Belle to stay away from Miss Ali's. But Belle, with all the calm in the world, approaches the strange creature and touches it lightly, while Rickett observes him astonished. Before continuing, I want you to know that snake-tail cats used to be the strongest monsters that controlled the demonic race. That said, you can guess what will happen now if we continue. Belle just placed his palm on the beast's face while telling him not to be afraid and stay calm, and that he knows it must be suffocating to be chained by magic. Suddenly Rickett, in view of the fact that his plan did not go as he expected, decides to remove the snake-tail cat, calling it back. But as he does that, suddenly the creature breaks out of the spell, and as he is about to attack Rickett, Belle gets in its way, and with nimble hand movements throws the creature away. After that, Rickett is amazed at what is happening, but Belle just tells him that he is a brute and with his magic he is only hurting the poor kitty. That's why, using his demonic power, he manages to control the beast, and trying to convert it to its original form, he destroys the chains that were controlling it. When doing that, after a few minutes we see a small kitten with a snake tail appear. Belle then walks up to the cat, while telling Rickett he used to have a lot of cats in his yard, while the other fellows think what kind of family he has that kind of cats. A few minutes later, Belle holds the cat and names it Meow, but Rickett is still upset and tells him that even though he beat him, he shouldn't think he's going to keep Ali's. But Ben replies that women are not really trophies, so he can't decide who gets her, whether he loses or wins a fight. Then, taking the free book that Lacey gave him, and with a little help from Meow, he transforms into a human cat. He begins to explain to his companions everything related to women. However, later we see that Lacey gave him a book for people over 18 years old, and she has one for all ages. After a while, Ali's and Newt go to Belle, because Ali's wants to thank him for helping her with the test. But she doesn't want to go alone, because it would be a bit uncomfortable. But when they get to the classroom, they are surprised by the detailed explanation he gives to his classmates about human relationships with women. All his classmates, including Ricket, are happy with him, but Alice calls him depraved and leaves the classroom. The next day when he arrives at the classroom, all his classmates honor him and treat Bell with respect, starting with Ricket. But Bell ignores him and doesn't give him any importance. Then Ricket tries to get Bell's attention, showing his respect, greeting him in different ways. But nothing works. For his part, Bell wonders why Alice ignores him, even though he thought he had struck up a friendship with a girl. Suddenly Newt arrives at his table, tells him to accompany her, and whispers in her ear that he knows how to activate the dual cultivation. After a while, Newt and Bell walk down one of the corridors of the academy, while they are followed by Ricket, who wants to learn more about Bell's wisdom. Moments later, Newt tells Bell that he is a little impatient for them to use the dual cultivation technique. But Bell calmly asks him how he discovered this technique. She answers that although the first generation was the one who created this technique, it is no longer a secret. Besides the fact that Alia was the only one to use it to seal the Demon King, that is already a legend in reality. Then she continues with her explanation that the demonic race lost all their magical power. However, on the day of the exam, they showed a powerful type of magic. Therefore, there must be some kind of connection between their magic and the dual technique. But after a while, Bell tells him why she has taken him to talk about the technique. But she answers that in reality, she has taken him to kill him. Suddenly she tries to attack him. But out of nowhere Ricket appears, to interpose himself and try to defend Bell. After that, Newt decides to leave, but not before warning Bell to be careful. In another place in a private room we see some people gathered, and they converse that Bell has become popular among the students. Then they deduce that some member of the council must have helped him. After a few minutes, they realize through a crystal ball that thanks to Miss Alice Rosie, it was possible that the demon could enter their ranks. Suddenly they consult the president of the student council of the academy what he thinks, and he, who is Adonis Rosie, answers them that he already sent someone to take charge. The next day, they are gathered in an outdoor activity in which both genders participate, but Bell knows that there are few opportunities to interact with the girls, and at that time is when they have mixed classes of combat practice. But also the group of companions led by Ricket wants to protect their leader Bell, since Newt is very close, but Bell calms him down by telling him not to worry, that it is much easier for him to move if he does not have so many people around him. After a few minutes, Brian approaches, who confronts Bell and wants to find out how much the demon, who managed to enroll in the academy, can resist. But Bell, with his usual calmness, only makes him furious by mocking that they will call him a superior being, since if they are in the same class, it means that he is not very superior. Suddenly Brian tries to punch him, but Bell with a deft move evades the blow. Suddenly Newt appears to tell him that enough is enough, and suddenly the teacher tells them to be quiet in order to start the class. He explains that in the combat practice class, they will fight with puppets in the forest. They will be divided into pairs, and when they cross one of the portals that have been created, they will be transported to a random place in the forest, and then that portal will be closed. So they have 4 hours to defeat the most puppets, and the more puppets they destroy, the more points they will get. After that, Ricket tries to team up with Bell, but Bell has already left the place, and holding Newt's hand he enters a portal with her. Seconds later she tells him that he is really brave, but he answers that he only wants to talk to her alone. Suddenly a giant puppet appears and Newt cuts its head off with a single blow. Then she says that she thought that magic puppets would be more impressive, but they are just a bunch of rocks controlled by magic. But Bell replies that although the puppets look humanoid, they are actually magical beings controlled by mana. In fact, their magical core controls them. However, Newt tells him to explain what he is talking about, and Bell tells him that in simple words, if he destroys the body without destroying the nucleus, he is wasting his time. Suddenly 2 rocky puppets appear and hold Newt while she was neglected. She yells at him that he can't move because they have a very strong grip. Then Bell, with his characteristic calmness, tells him that to find his cores, the magic detection ability, he must be really strong. That's why he presumes they have sent them in pairs, since a single student could not. Newt, not wanting to waste any more time, tells him to activate his detection magic. But Bell replies to him that his level is very weak, even combined with hers. However, he can see them clearly, and using his all-seeing eye ability, he can detect that that particular puppet has him in the armpit. The all-seeing eye is a power that only demon kings have. Not only can they see through everything, but they can also detect the flow of magic. In this way he manages to give it a direct hit in the core and the other puppet has it in the hip. Without wasting time, Belle manages to hit the point, destroying both creatures and freeing Newt, who falls into his arms. Belle thinks that thanks to the fact that she has used dual cultivation a couple of times, it has allowed her to use the powers she has recovered at will. On the other hand, Newt asks her why she has saved him if she tried to kill him, and Belle answers that if she had wanted to kill him, she would not have been so obvious, and it is clear that she only wanted to warn him, since she even mentioned the healing technique. While in another part of the forest, Brian has destroyed several magic puppets around him. Back with Belle and Newt, he has fainted, and it is because when the Demon King uses the all-seeing eye, he has the ability to see the body of his partner or enemy with X-rays, i.e., he can see the bones, flow of magical power. But, as he has very little mana, his ability of the all-seeing eye is very unstable, and that is why his X-ray vision is weaker than normal. So when he saw Newt, he saw her without any clothes, and it is the first time he sees the body of a woman without anything. After what happened, Belle decides to explain a little to Newt about the power of the all-seeing eye, besides telling him that he already deactivated the ability, and he will try to be more careful. When Newt knows that, he laughs and then sensually approaches Belle, and tells him that he already knows why Ristana felt a special scent in him, since he is more than a simple incubus. Then she tells him she does know why someone would want to get rid of him. But Belle answers that it must be because he is a demon. Newt continues talking and tells her that she is partly right, but it is more complex than that, and that the person who wants him dead is Alice. After that news, Newt explains that when the Demon King was alive, humans, elves, and beast people formed alliances against the common enemy. But after the war, humans gained 70% of the control of Prestilland, thanks to the participation of Alia, but the remaining 30% was divided among the other races. Thus the land was filled with human supremacists, who mostly humiliated the other races, treating them as inferior. That's why for a long time, the elves, the beast people, and the dwarves have been angry with the behavior of humans. In fact, the Rosy family represents the symbol of the victory of the humans, but Alice broke not only the agreement of one quota per family, but also brought a demon to join the academy, so that is more than enough reason to start a fight between the other races. And that's why eliminating Belle is one of the priorities of the humans. After Newt's explanation, Belle replies that since she is a descendant of one of the beast heroines, she is helping him to give her race a reason to fight against humans. But Newt tells him that he is not completely wrong, but first they must graduate first, and it is better that they leave there. Suddenly Brian appears out of nowhere, causing the gravitational force of the place to increase. Then Brian tells Belle that he is a stupid child and that he will teach him a lesson, but he is interrupted by Newt, who laughs and makes fun of his speech. After that he approaches him. Belle for her part observes that she has in her hand a vial with dragon saliva, and without wasting time she ingests it. In her case, the dragon saliva is a rare mana restore, and whoever uses it restores their magical power, but absorbs their vital force to take them to their maximum potential. Brian, seeing this, laughs that she uses a mana booster, but without wasting any more time she starts her attack. Brian activates a defensive gravitational force field shield, which when he uses it, hits directly Newt's face, then continues hitting her while he compares her to the demon race, calling her a piece of trash. Belle, who is watching everything, notices that on the floor is a vial with some dragon saliva. After a few minutes, when Brian is about to give Newt a blow, which he says is 3 times stronger than his gravitational field, his hand is hurt, and behind his back comes Belle, who says that although he doesn't have much of the dragon saliva potion left, at least it restores 1% of his power. As he gets closer, his presence looks more intimidating and threatening. In another scene we see a flashback of Brian, in which we see that his father trained him and his brothers so that they would not be inferior to other races, and especially not to bow down to other demons, after the horrible things they did during his tenure. And from that day on, Brian swore that he would not fall before anyone. Returning to the forest, Brian taunts Belle, telling him that his sneak attack was so null that if he thinks he can beat him, being a sophomore. But Belle, with his characteristic calmness, replies that he is in no hurry and that he should apologize to Newt for offending and mocking the race of beast people. Brian tells Belle that he does think he will actually apologize to her. In fact, he thinks she is a worthless piece of garbage, just like Belle. Then Belle tells him that he is giving her a chance to redeem herself so she can die with some dignity. Brian only gets offended and replies that he doesn't know where he got that overconfidence, but he will gladly teach him a lesson by showing him his true power. Brian tells him that the condition to pass the second year is to create his own magic spirit, and without wasting any more time, Brian summons his magic spirit called Heracle's Bone Erosion. He also tells them that he has never been defeated, and for every punch of Heracle's, he has the power of the 12 layers of mana that he has accumulated. Without wasting any more time, Brian activates an attack of Heracle's straight to Bell, but Bell with one hand stops the attack, leaving Brian surprised, who thinks how is it possible that he stopped the attack if he used the punch of the spirit of 12 times his strength. Actually, Bell uses the all-seeing eye, so he can see the flow of mana in his body, and thus nullify the attack like the other races. And he tells Brian, who knows that magic spirits are supposed to be stronger. Suddenly the spirit of Heracles launches another attack, with no better results. Bell explains that when the sorcerer's magic comes from his heart, it is called mana. However, when the mana used to control the spirit is too pure, it does not work on a mortal body. Therefore, the best way to fight a magical spirit is to fight another magical spirit. Brian taunts him by telling him that Heracles will soon finish him off, but Bell tells him that spirits are personifications of the summoner's emotions and desires, and when he attacks, the spirit transfers those emotions to his opponent, and that among the most common emotions are justice, peace, order. Also that emotions feed the spirit, but in the case of Bell, his spirit makes his opponent feel the same pain that they inflict on him, and that he summoned it during the first attack. Without wasting any more time, Cain, the spirit of Bell, appears, who has the figure of a creature with the shape of 3 snake heads. It instantly devours Heracles, as the emotion that predominates in Brian is the fear of not being like his father. Suddenly in front of him appears the figure of his father. Then Bell tells him that Cain, his power is to return 7 times the pain received, and with a single attack, Cain knocks out Brian. But before continuing with a new attack, Newt stops Bell. He asks her why she is doing it. Then she answers that above all, they are still in the academy, and if he eliminates him, then he will be the enemy of the whole institution. If that happens, what would be the point of joining the academy? Bell meditates a little, although he knows he has been a little impulsive, but he can no longer tolerate the behavior of humans, being so contemptuous towards other races. Suddenly Brian gets up from the ground, while exclaiming that it is impossible for someone from the demon race to have so much power. And without wasting a second, he tries to make a surprise attack against Bell, but with a slight movement he throws him away, leaving him injured on the ground. Minutes later, Bell, holding Newt on the floor in her hands, she tells him what she intends to do, that this is not the time for romance. But Bell explains to her that it's actually the side effect of the dragon's saliva, and if she doesn't use all the extra magic, then it will have a rebound effect, and the only way she can think of to suppress it is to use the dual cultivation technique. But when she tries it with Newt, nothing happens. But suddenly a portal appears in the forest, and from there emerges Adonis Rosie, the president of the student council, who approaches Brian and tells him that his behavior is not the most adequate, besides that his appearance is a total disaster, and that he found out from the secretary of the student council, Teresa, that he put at risk the safety of his sister to threaten an enemy, so he will destroy him. And without wasting any more time, a lightning bolt makes him disappear. After that, Adonis goes to Newt and Bell and tells them that he realizes that Bell is about to be engulfed by his own mana, and it is a pity to see a demon conjure such a strong mana. Then he tells Newt that if he leaves at that moment he will pass over, that he knows that she tried to approach his sister Alice as a spy of the beast people. Then Newt explains to her that at the beginning it was the reason why she approached Alice, but with time she gave up that idea, and she knows from what she shared with her that Alice is not a bad person. Then she has a flashback of the memories shared with Alice, and thinks that maybe she has not been her best friend and she is not worthy of being her best friend, but at least this time she will do the right thing. Then suddenly she holds Bell and throws him strongly to the skies, while she tells him to look for Alice, and tell him that she is sorry, while she thinks that if Alice has Bell close, then she can be really happy. After that, Newt looks at Adonis and tells him that now it's his turn, and Bell says that's right, now it's his turn. Newt turns around surprised and tells Bell why did he come back, that she was sincere and had sent him to Alice. But Bell answers him that yes, she really thought he would leave, only because she told him to. Besides, he doesn't intend to waste the mana for coming back. Besides, he only needs 3 moves to get rid of Adonis. Newt, stunned, tells him that it is impossible that with only 3 moves he can finish Adonis, since he is one of the most powerful students in the history of the academy. Seconds later, Adonis interrupts their conversation, telling them that if they really underestimate him, that with only 3 moves they will be able to destroy him. Newt tells Belle that nobody has been able to calculate his attack speed. Suddenly Belle is covered little by an energy in the form of crystals, but Belle using his power manages to repel the attack. Then Teresa, who is observing everything, thinks that this is the first time that someone blocks Adonis' attack. Belle explains how that could have been. Most of the mana is transmitted through space because it is easy to visualize. In that case, the magic comes out of a magical formation from the wizard's hand. As Adonis' magic is transmitted by visualizing through time, the magic reaches the opponent at the same moment he casts it. Therefore, if Belle also visualizes that he uses time as a means to transmit high-speed defense magic, then just like that he solves the problem. Adonis answers that he thinks it is simple, since the idea of visualizing through time took him 3 years of training. Although he doesn't understand how he understood it so quickly, he tells him that he thinks it is interesting, but there is something more. At that moment, Belle screams in pain, and Newt realizes that Belle lost a hand. Adonis explains that Belle's own mana is about to erode his body, and now every time he uses magic, he accelerates that erosion. Therefore, the more he defends himself, the more the process will accelerate so that the accumulation of mana will devour him whole. And suddenly Adonis launches another frozen attack that Belle manages to stop while he goes to Newt. Then Newt, with tears in her eyes, tells her not to continue defending herself, that she will do it, since she thinks that only he can do something for Alice. But Belle replies that if she tries to do it, she will die immediately. Newt answers her that he doesn't care if something happens to her. Then Belle asks her if she doesn't mind dying, but she tells him that a person like her who betrayed her friend doesn't deserve to live. At that moment, Belle has a flashback and remembers that by using Cain to feel Newt's emotions, the dual cultivation technique was activated inside his body. With Lacey, it happened that she wanted the Demon King to revive the demon race, and her magic responded to that. And in the case of Alice, she needed protection, and at that moment he wanted only to protect her. There he realizes that the condition to activate the dual healing technique actually is. Without thinking more, Belle asks Newt what her greatest wishes are. She hesitates a little, but between tears and sobs, she tells him that she wants to survive, to apologize to Alice and be a real friend to her. Belle immediately answers that being that what she longs for, he will grant her wish, and immediately kisses her on the mouth, generating a strong explosion around her, creating a shockwave. For his part, Adonis, perplexed, thinks that how could he counter his attack if just a few seconds ago he had seen him weak and about to die. After a moment, after the smoke disperses, we see Belle appear among the dust and the ground fog, who is completely restored, but without his previous form, as well as bringing Newt charged. When he arrives there, Belle tells him that now that he has made his second move, he has one more move to make. Belle tells him that his first move was to discover his attack magic, the second move was to stop the erosion, and now he has to perform the third move. For his part, Adonis answers him that what he did makes sense, and that what he just did was the secret technique of dual cultivation. Teresa interrupts him, asking Adonis that if he is talking about that method, then it means that. Adonis answers immediately that that is correct, that this is the legendary magic created by his grandmother, and that according to legend this magic can only be used by sorcerers of the opposite gender. Also, with the strong magical power, there will be a feeling similar to lust between the two who use it. Adonis then tells Belle that if he thinks that by using an old method from 50 years ago, he will be able to beat him, then he is sadly mistaken. But Belle replies to remember that he will beat him in one more move. Adonis then thinks that he is very arrogant, and that 50 years have passed, that if he really is the person he thinks, then he is no match for him. Suddenly Belle, holding Newt, tells Adonis to wait for what he will do. Suddenly a portal opens, and Belle jumps out together with Newt, leaving Adonis frustrated and stunned, while he asks Teresa what just happened. She answers that the time for the combat practice is over, that's why the teleportation portals have been activated automatically. And it seems that this was the third movement that Belle was referring to. Back with the rest of the companions, many see Belle appear carrying Newt from the portal. While they ask why a demon is carrying a beast person, others say that she is fine, since she seems to be fainting. Suddenly Ricket comes running up to her, asking her if everything is alright, since everyone was surprised by the 2 impressive explosions of magical power that had happened in the forest a while ago. He also asks her if it had something to do with Newt. Belle looks her in the eyes. While she answers Ricket that something happened with her, immediately she remembers the moment of the kiss and gets down from Belle's arms while she says she can't believe she did that and thinks she did something horrible again against Alice. Ricket thinks that they did what men and women do together, and that during the combat practice he managed to dominate the enemy, thinking that Newt is the one who wanted to kill him before. Suddenly a scream is heard, calling out to Newt. It is Alice who tells her that yes, she is an idiot, as she approaches step by step and with a look of fury. Then Ricket and his classmates ask Belle, yes, she is the girl he had a thing with, and he answers yes. Alice then arrives to Newt and asks him if he is okay, that she was very worried, because she had noticed a huge magic power in the forest, and with the explosions, she thought that something could have happened to him. Then Newt hugs her while telling her that now everything is okay. Suddenly a portal opens, and from there Adonis emerges, saying that he's too quick to say that, since he wasn't going to let them get off that easy.